So why don't we start with Helen? I believe you have a PowerPoint to go with it, which I think I can help with.
Well, we may or may not need it.
Okay.
But I just want to introduce perhaps with a bit of an anecdote or tell you where I came from in terms of,
Oh, may I bring that mic over? Yeah.
This will help. How's that for sound?
Beautiful.
Good? Okay. So you started by defining social enterprise, and that's something that we had to do. But we had to do it for government. Because social enterprise may have existed and exists for all of you in the world out there, but in government it didn't exist yet. So when I first proposed something like an Office for Social Enterprise, it would be well over a year ago now. I was met with blank stares, and people knew what social innovation was because that concept had taken hold in some ways. But social and enterprise seemed to be an oxymoron to many. It was a contradiction of terms. It was either over in the social end of the spectrum, or in that set of ministries that deal with social matters, but it was not necessarily an economic concern. So bringing those two together and explaining those was really, it took a little bit of work. But I built on some of the work that I've done. As was mentioned, I was the chair of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which is just the best thing you could possibly be, for over 6 years. And in my time there, we were a grant-making organization, and making grants, we're the grant-making director for the Ontario government. But really what we were was an investment agency. And we weren't a social service agency. People always thought we were doing wonderful work in communities, yes, but we were making hard financial decisions. We were making decisions on roughly an average of 1,500 projects a year. I mean, if you think of that in terms of deal flow for any other social venture capital organization, it would be astounding. And the go-bad rate on those investments, by the way, because we tracked outcomes and results, to some extent, did they meet the terms of their contract with us, essentially, with the terms we tracked. The go-bad rate was under 1%. So if I look at Bill, I look at others, Tanya, who are very sophisticated in the investment space, you look at that and you'd say, that's extraordinary. Well, 34 years of practice with Trillium taught us how to make very wise investments in communities. But we made them only in registered charities or not-for-profit organizations, and we were strictly a grant maker. Trillium couldn't make loans, couldn't do any other kind of social finance. And I started to see some possibilities that were being missed because we were limited that way. Now we had $120 million annually to invest, so I mean, we were doing pretty well. But I was fortunate enough to be put together with Dr. Eric Hoskins when he was the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. It was the Premier that put us together because we were both talking about something called, putting not-for-profits, at least, on a better footing, or having some relationship with them in terms of government because of the work they were doing, how important it was, and how economically sustainable and viable and important it was. So he put us together and we ended up co-chairing something called the Partnership Project, which was referred to before. Now it's the Partnership Forum, which is an advisory body to the Government of Ontario on the not-for-profit sector. But that wasn't enough still, because we are missing a whole part of the enterprise piece that is for-profit and is perfectly respectable. I should go back a little farther and tell you that I've worked in government since I started in 1982. I've been in and out of government, but it was always in economic industries. And I remember in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, making the case for a small business division because small business, I said, wasn't the same as all business. They have different needs, and collectively they're very high impact. And so we did create a small business division and start to separate that out. The same thing was needed here, something that recognizes social enterprise and entrepreneurship as different, distinctive, and as important as other kinds of entrepreneurship that we were supporting through our Centers of Entrepreneurship, through our Centers of Excellence and other legacy organizations. So now we can turn to the slides. And we also had a definitional problem. When we got the go-ahead to create this office for social enterprise, and I was given the opportunity to be the special advisor on this. We had to define, and I think we must have used the same Wikipedia definition to begin with, but you're all doing this in one form or another. What we wanted to find was a definition that was acceptable and understandable across all the different areas of government. And so we came up with what are really a series of principles. One is that social enterprises, yes, are different than other enterprises because they are more mission-driven. They have a social benefit or purpose that they confer somehow on a community somewhere. And yes, they do apply market-based strategies. They are businesses, after all. We decided to be agnostic about whether they were incorporated as for-profits or not-for-profits. It doesn't really matter. It's what they're doing and the outcomes they achieve that we're seeing as more important. And we saw the characteristics, in brief, of today's entrepreneurs as being more open, full of ideas, of course, collaborative and engaged in their communities, and achieving positive impact. It's what they achieve and what they do that's ultimately as important as turning a profit, though profits are nothing to be sneezed at. And we created this social enterprise spectrum, which you see at the bottom here. So it goes from, this purely social charitable organizations, those that begin to achieve some revenue generating streams, those that are social purpose businesses as we move farther right on the spectrum, and then there are those that are more financial or commercially applied in their view. The traditional businesses applying CSR, I'm wondering if CSR is even relevant anymore. Corporate social responsibility seems so yesterday. It seems like now even the largest banks and corporations are doing things like setting up entrepreneurial arms that allow, or being funders themselves, grant makers, or partnering with communities to stimulate that kind of activity. So why do social enterprises matter? This is also part of everything I did to build the case in government for with a team of people who are wonderful, by the way, and some of them are here today, and I thank them for all the help they've given in making this happen. We had to prove that they are vital to economic activity, to job creation, and that there are a lot of them out there. How many? The problem is we don't know, and that's part of what we try to do is try to count, because counting gives some reality, some sense of how big, how many, and how much they matter. But we think that there are a lot of them, and we count something like 10,000 self-identified social enterprises in Ontario alone. We think that number is much greater. When we did the work on the not-for-profit sector, the partnership project, and probably you were part of that, in fact, with the ONN and the Ontario Nonprofit Network, the best estimate we could get for counting there was that there were something like 50,000 not-for-profits operating in Ontario. The only way we could get that number was from how they identified in terms of their tax status. So if they didn't identify, that didn't mean they didn't exist. So we saw social enterprises as being vital for economic activity and job creation, for attracting investors who are more interested these days in doing something that has meaning rather than making money alone, and offering more sustainable solutions and being actually partners to government and intermediaries, delivery agents, effective delivery agents for a lot of the public services that are not the preserve of government alone. So the Office for Social Enterprise, we do a few things. One, we coordinate across government, all the different programs, policies. Government is still the only place where you can get legislation to happen. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can give to the private sector, and that they can, I used to say naively long ago, I remember I was at a public policy forum event, and I said, well, there are a lot of things we can outsource to the private sector, but policy making is the reserve of government. I don't think that's true anymore. Legislation, I think that is true, and there are a lot of things that relate to legislation and regulation and program development that really government is particularly unique to government, but also the government is particularly good at. delivering all the programs? I don't think so. So we promote our leadership, and I don't say Ontario as a government, their leadership. I think it's the leadership of the social entrepreneurs in the province. We support social enterprise development with new partnerships and access to capital. One example is the Social Venture Exchange that actually Mars is Allison Hewitt from Mars. Mars has been working on creating a social venture exchange, a platform for uniting impact investors with high impact or potential investments and creating that marketplace where they can be termed investment grade or investment quality. 7 years, Allison, working on that concept. And now, I think with our help, I'd like to think, and working with our partners like Mars, Discovery District, I think, actually it's the Center for Impact Investing in that case. I think we've been able to pull it off now and get the Ontario Securities Commission approval to be able to go ahead and launch this, which will be happening imminently. So we collaborate, we partner with other players, and there are many, and you represent many organizations who are active in this space. And as I mentioned, addressing those regulatory program and service gaps, that's something we're uniquely able to do too. We've done a lot of things to date, and I'm not going to go through the whole list of things that there are, but I would like to point out a couple of things. How much time do I have? Not much? Let me just leave it at that. I just want to say that I talked about the Social Venture Exchange. I wanted to talk about Catapult. This is the microloan program that Tanya and I discussed this. She in her capacity at CSI. We discussed this, back in February. I think by June we had the program up and running because there was no loan program for social ventures. The Ontario government didn't have one. Trillium wasn't able to do that. And we decided that it would be a good thing to be able to have government make the first investment, but have CSI administer the program, the right intermediary, and also bring in partners so that we could leverage that investment. And those partners include TD Bank, Alternative Savings, KPMG, Microsoft Canada was the first one in, I think, and of course, Social Capital Partners. So here we have the three partners in a venture, and I'd just like to close with that illustration because then I can hand it over to Bill and he can take it from there.
Segue.
Thank you. So Bill, why don't you share some